Okay, on our way out to the meat bird barn, got to do the last things before the meat birds move in. This is July 23rd, 2025. We have 225 Cornish Red Cross meat chickens gonna move in here shortly. We just got confirmation, probably about 2.5 hours. They'll be nearby and I can pick them up to actually bring home and move into the brooder. So we've got those finishing touches to have it turnkey ready. Okay, so flash forward, there it is, all turnkey ready. And this video gonna actually show you how we got to this point. We went from basically just the brooder barrier set up, bare brooder with just the fixtures hung and the bedding down, and took it to this point where it is now turnkey ready. This is ready to bring boxes of chicks in, place the boxes in the brooder, and unload the chicks. So that's what's in this video. Stick around and learn all about it. And thanks so much for joining us here at Twin Oaks Family Farm. So we're really in good shape for being ready for meat bird move-in. Got a few finishing touches. Want to make it turnkey ready so that when the birds are actually on site, all we have to do is set the boxes down into the brooder and get the birds out of the boxes, get a good accurate count on how many are in the flock, imprint on them getting to water, and then just letting them settle in. We don't want to have to spend time when they get here filling waters, placing waters, what heat lamps need to be on, what heat lamps need to be off, whether we need them at all. So going to do those things right now because we've got about a 2-hour window before we can actually get the birds in hand and get them on site. So going to finish up the things that we need to do. So you'll get to see the barn turnkey ready before the birds move in, and then we'll document this flock day by day for their entire production, which is about 6 weeks. So if you want to see how excellent poultry can be made on small family farms on a small scale, which when I'm saying small scale, I'm saying anywhere from 200 to 400 birds at a time in a flock. But you can also take all of the things that we do and scale them up if you want to make bigger flocks, or you can scale these practices down if you want to raise poultry for your own household. This can all be done on a small scale of, say, 50 birds at a time, 25 birds at a time, 100 birds at a time. You can figure out how much chicken would we want for our household for a year, and if you have the freezer storage for it, you can raise all that at one time. In about 6 weeks, you can produce all of the poultry you need for an entire year. So you can take practices that we show you here and do that. So I'm going to get started. So we used to take pieces of plywood, like these long pieces that are leaned up against the wall there, and we built our entire brooder space out of those. But we've since figured out a way we can stretch our investment in these crates a little further. Is they're great for making temporary barrier walls for our flocks, and they're very easy to size to what we want and then expand. We can just configure the space that we need for the flock at any given time with these livestock crates if we need to confine them a little more than the entire footprint of the building. You don't have to have exactly this setup, but we like to start them and grow them and finish them in the same place. And when they are chicks, I keep them somewhat confined to a pretty small footprint because you're going to have resources like food, water, targeted ambient temperature influence in one area for them, and that's where you want to keep them. You want to keep them near those resources. Plus, with baby chicks, they'll have a tendency to find corners, like 90-degree corners, like we still have one all the way in the back. We'll actually walk back and take a look at that. They'll have a tendency to find 90-degree corners and pile into those corners. So we may still have an issue back here that we have to address with pen configuration. I'd really like to see another board come around kind of a corner here and kind of round that corner out like we rounded that corner out. But we'll have to get the birds moved in and see how it goes. In the beginning, they're going to stay near this core central part of the building and of their space. because that's where we're going to have their resources. But here's another example of we just blocked out a corner. So if you're starting chicks, it is a good practice to take away the 90-degree corners. But one thing I wanted to mention about using these crates for their temporary barrier wall, and even when all we used was the plywood, these birds typically are not going to jump over this, and it's short enough that we can easily step over it and walk in and out of their brooder space in order to work in there, such as swapping out waters, swapping out feeders. So that's why we like a short wall around our brooding space. It keeps the chicks where we want them, and it gives us access to walk in there and to work. And little caveat on that, if you're going to be brooding chicks and walking in and out of their space, you have to be really, really careful, almost do kind of a shuffle where you basically don't lift your feet off of the floor very high at all, because chicks will dart right under your feet. So if you're going to have a walk-in brooder space, which you almost have to with a flock of any kind of size, you could start them in a trawl maybe where you're reaching in from outside and they're totally contained, but they're going to outgrow that so quickly. At some point, you're going to be walking and working in their floor space with them, and you have to continue just to be careful, because for a while they will dart right under your feet until they get a little bigger. You can have an accident very easily, and if you step on a chick, they're not going to survive that. So first thing I'm going to start with is the heat lamps. We have 12 set up. We have our electric wired into the infrastructure of the building, so we can configure heat lamps where we need them, but we're only going to light up 6 of them. So I've just checked the temperature. It is 86 degrees Fahrenheit. 88 degrees Fahrenheit is the real feel. Humidity is around 65%. We do have a little bit of breeze moving, so when these birds are actually being moved in, we'll have a set of doors open on both east and west sides of our building, so we'll have good airflow coming through here, and we'll have an overhead light on. And since the temperature is below 90 degrees Fahrenheit, real feel, we're going to go ahead and have part of those heat lamps on. And since it's so close to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, we're choosing to only have half of the heat lamps on. For point of reference, the temperature these birds want ambient conditions to be is about 95 degrees. You can see here what we've got set up, and this is part of the reason that we turn things on, we test it, we check it out. So we're going to leave 6 of them off, try to have 6 of them on, but you can see here I've got one bulb not lit up. So I'm going to pay some attention to that and see what's going on there. We want all 6 of those bulbs to be in working order. When we set the barn up several days ago and tested all 12 of these bulbs, at that time they were all working. So sometimes you have to double back and see what's going on, but we'll make sure all 6 of those are working. And when we move the birds in, that's what we're going to start with, and we'll just evaluate from there based on the bird's behavior and based on what our temperatures are doing. We know for certain that there'll be a nighttime check at about 10 p.m. out here in the barn. By that time of evening, we'll have an opportunity to see what our overnight temperatures are going to be like. The way we work with the heat lamps and the birds is just to try to be really responsive as flock managers to their behavior and to the outside conditions, so that we can try to give the birds the optimal and most comfortable ambient conditions that they actually want in their brooder space. Okay, next thing is filling up waters. So about 16 single-gallon waters there, gonna fill them all up. We're gonna place 8 on the floor, and we're gonna have 8 on standby, so that as the birds drink up the first 8, we can just swap waters in and out real quick. And when we swap waters out, we take time to clean them and refill them right then, so that we always have a full set of replacement waters on standby to swap into the pen for the birds. We have our water source right here in the barn. It's really nice to have your water source very close to where you're raising your birds. I hold the waters in hand to operate the water spigot when I'm normally doing that. Couldn't run the camera and the water spigot at the same time, was the only reason that it was set on the ground. It's kind of messy and doesn't catch all the water that way, but wanted to show y'all that the water source is nearby. It's nice to have the water right there because any quantity of birds, they're going to consume quite a bit of water. You want to be able to have it handy where your birds are so that you can keep it filled frequently and make sure they always have fresh, clean water. Tip is we leave these waters setting upside down until we place them. And we've filled them, we've attached the bases, the reservoir's threaded, and the base screws onto it. But we leave them setting upside down until we're ready to use them, and we flip them over when we place them into the pen. Okay, so there we go. Waters are placed. We have them on pieces of scrap wood. We call those risers. Those more or less just help prevent a lot of shavings from being kicked into the trays. There's still going to be some shavings kicked into the trays. When we move the birds in, we'll gauge if those are actually going to function the way they need to. We have to watch that the birds can actually reach the trays, that they're not setting too high. The good thing about most of these risers is there's a little bit of a lip around where the water is sitting, so the birds can actually get onto the riser itself and they can easily reach the tray from there. You can see if we have a big enough riser, sometimes we'll even double up the waters that we place there, and we'll also gauge how the flock settles in for the placement of the waters. It never fails. Seems like they gravitate toward certain spots in the brooder no matter what. There must be some kind of little microclimatic differences that they notice. So we always find that with every group, there'll be certain spots in the brooder where more birds want to concentrate. With that being the case, wherever the birds pick out to be is where they'll drink down their water the fastest and eat their food up the fastest and need the most resources. So we try to encourage the birds to spread out evenly throughout their space, and we'll gauge how they're using it and place water and then feed accordingly as well. Okay, let's go see about feed. It is warm in the chicken brooder, but it should be warm in the chicken brooder. So typically when we're starting chicks and we're working in the brooder, you're in there, you're sweating, it's warm. Wanted y'all to know that's normal. But let's take a look at feed here and what we've got going with feed. Okay, so this is what we feed, 22% start to finish Kalmbach meat bird feed. The bag does say medicated. The reason it says medicated is because of the ingredient Amprolium. Amprolium triggers the medicated label. Amprolium is included to prevent a coccidosis problem within the flock. Coccidosis comes from a protozoa called Coccidia that is naturally found in soils. Poultry is very susceptible, as are other livestock and domestic animals. So in meat birds, it's very important to prevent it causing a problem for them. So we have Amprolium in the feed. It does trigger the medicated label, but there's no withdrawal time. You could actually feed it right up until you take feed away before the birds go to processing. We typically do withdraw ours and finish our birds on 2 to 3 day just cracked corn finish for the end, but Amprolium is not residual in the meat product that we get from meat birds. That's why there's no withdrawal time. So what we have here is about half, a little less than half of what we expect these birds to eat in 6 weeks of production. I'm going to carry a bag of feed over to the barn and give you a few more tips on feed. Okay, and this is why farmers don't need to go to a gym. I'm working up a sweat. So carried a bag of feed over here. Want to give you a few notes on planning for feed quantity, feed storage, and how we start the birds on feed. So first of all, have a storage place for your feed where you can protect it from the weather and protect it from rodents. You don't want your feed sacks getting rained on. That's going to lead to moldy feed. Can't feed it. That's not good for your animals. You don't want rodents getting into your feed. It causes a lot of waste. It attracts even more rodents. It could contribute to the spread of disease. We just don't want that around our livestock. So we actually have a rodent-proof place for our feed storage in a utility box trailer that my husband used for concrete work that he did as a contractor, in addition to his farm work and in addition to his day job. But That trailer has proved perfect. It's totally sealed up. Mice and rats can't get in there. No rodents are getting to the feed. So that works out better for us than trying to store it right here. In the barn, the feed does come in 50-pound sacks, but we buy it a skid at a time. So a ton at a time. 40 bags come on a skid, and that is 2,000 pounds. That's a ton of feed. So we know from experience that we expect our birds to consume 10 pounds per Cornish rock cross meat chicken over our 6-week production schedule. So when we go to plan for feed, we take the number of birds that we expect to finish in the flock, in this case 200, and we multiply that times 10, the amount of feed we expect each bird to consume, and that gives us how many pounds should finish our flock. So for this flock, we should be fine with 1 skid. We went ahead and paid for 45 bags, so that's a skid plus 5 bags, and we do expect probably to maybe need, hopefully, just about 5 bags of cracked corn at the end of production to finish the birds on. And some of that depends on how many birds do you finish, 225 or 210 or 200 or 180. You don't know what you're going to get into with your meat chickens. There can be things that cause flock loss in your flock that are unpreventable. So you plan though for the best case scenario. So we went ahead and paid for 45 bags of feed. Most of the time we try to get it all here before production starts. In this case, working with our feed mill, we got 20 bags of it here, and we will get the rest of it here during production. I'm confident they're going to be able to get it. I'm confident we're going to be able to get it here, and it's already paid for, so it's not going to be a problem. Not going to be a problem. Our feed schedule is full feed round the clock. We do not take feed away. Sometime during this flock's production, we'll do another video on 12 hours on, 12 hours off as far as a feeding schedule for meat birds. We don't do that. But if you research online how to feed meat birds, that's the advice you're going to get. Feed them 12 hours on, give them access to food for 12 hours, and then take the food away for 12 hours, and then use that pattern throughout production. We don't do that. Would not do that. Have done it. Hated it. Won't do it again. So we give them full feed, but we don't put feed down when they move in. It's not on the floor when we move birds in. Basically, as far as the brooder, what you see there right now is what we're going to have for the birds when they move in. If we don't need the heat lamps, then we can gauge that from the bird's behavior. We can unplug them. But the water and the bedding, and we'll turn the overhead light on, and we'll have a couple more doors open. That's the way the space is going to be set up for them. So that's basically turnkey. These are the feeders we're going to start with, but we're going to move the birds in first and have them in here a couple hours, and then we'll put feed in. And that's really critical because you need the stress from your birds being in transport to dissipate before you put food in their digestive system. But we do want to get food in them, so it is critical that the shipping happens in a timely manner and that we get them home in a timely manner, unload them right away, because really around their hour 21 is ideally when we want to get feed into their digestive system. And we don't really have a way to know that. We don't really have a way to know exactly when were they hatched. We're trusting that they were hatched and promptly sorted and shipped to us and got here quickly. And then by the time we get them unloaded, we're hitting around getting food in them before or by that 21-hour mark, so that their work on digestion can begin between that 21 and 24-hour mark of theirs. That would be ideal if we could know that that's what was going on, but we don't want them waiting a long extended length of time before we get feed in them. And likewise, we don't want to introduce food to them immediately upon moving them in. So we hope and trust that there's a little bit of just things working out, that we're getting feed into them in a good window of time. But we've got feed ready now, so water's on the floor, water's in reserve, feeders, some in reserve, some that we will put down on the floor. Initially, a whole lot of birds fit at a little feeder, so at the most, we might put 10 in to start with, just to be able to spread them out throughout the pen and to try to encourage them to utilize the whole pen. And as they eat from those, then we'll be able to pull them out, clean them immediately, put filled ones back in. And we'll work out of these feeders and waters for maybe 10 to 14 days before we switch to bigger supplies. These are the bigger feeders we'll move into next. They hold 40 pounds each. These are the bigger waters we'll move into next. They hold about 5 gallons each. We have 20 of these trays. We didn't quite use about half of the 50-pound bag. It will probably take the birds probably 3 days maybe to consume this first 50 pounds of feed. From there, their rate of feed consumption will just compound and speed up and continue basically to do that over the entire production length. Okay, so now we are turnkey ready. It really is important to have all these steps done, because one of the worst nightmares if you're raising chicks, when you're trying to move them in and you're working with a walk-in brooder space, you're in there trying to work among them. If you are trying to imagine boxes of chicks throughout the space, you're trying to unload the chicks, and then you go in there and try to set down 10 waters, and you try to put bedding down, and you try to position your heat lamps. If you have chicks running around, that's going to be a nightmare. We make this turnkey ready so that literally all we have to do once we get chicks here is take the boxes in there, cut the straps off of them, and dip the chicks' beaks into the waters, and then release them in the pen, and they're ready to go. And as soon as we get all the chicks out of the boxes and counted, we leave the brooder space and let them settle in, and we observe them from outside the space for a couple of hours, and then we'll put feed in for them, and we'll just continue to monitor them as the day goes on. But we've got everything ready to go. Now we're just waiting on birds. We hope you'll continue to join us to see how this flock grows and goes day to day, and we're going to make excellent poultry from taking on raising these Cornish Rock Cross meat chickens. This is a turnkey brooder for 225 Cornish Rock Cross meat chicks. I'm Melissa at Twin Oaks Family Farm, and we hope you'll join us again. God bless y'all. And we hope that whenever you're eating chicken, you're eating real chicken sourced from small farms in your area, if at all possible. Please support local agriculture wherever local is for you. Agriculture needs consumers, and consumers definitely need agriculture.